Hi, I'm Janneke de Roy from the Netherlands, and you're listening to Above Ground Podcast.
Disclaimer. The hosts of this podcast, Timothy Patrick and Will Foley, are by no means medical professionals. However, having lived experience with mental illness themselves, they have gained useful perspectives on common mental health issues that some of us struggle to overcome on a daily basis. By sharing their stories, they hope to create connection. By creating connection, they hope to help you find your purpose. And through purpose, we can all begin to build the foundation for positive mental health. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Are you ready to lace up your boots, throw up your horns, and jump into the pit? Then let's stomp the stigmas of mental illness. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now, Will Foley and Timothy Patrick.
This episode is brought to you by Inner Balance Massage Therapy, located downtown Boston Spa. Inner Balance offers all styles, a long list of products, and relief from the everyday wear and tear. Call Nancy at 518-588-4949 or go online and book an appointment at www.innerbalancement.com. Call Nancy and mention this ad and she'll give you $15 off. Nancy at Inner Balance Massage Therapy.
Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to
Above Ground Podcast.
Above Ground Podcast, because you can't
Serve
below.
No, you cannot.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another fun-filled round table episode, because tonight we are joined at the table by none other than the voiceover smoothness of Jordan.
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Hey everyone, it's your old pal Jordan, back again to talk about mental health and mental wellness with my good friends Will and Tim. How are we tonight, my friends?
Wow.
You got to say something.
I
Not
know.
as enthusiastic as you, but I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking.
Well, you know,
That was awesome.
I'm just very enthused to be here at this table with you folks and to have this discussion. And what are we discussing tonight?
You know, we're going to talk about that really sticky substance called love.
Ooh. You get caught in some love, you might not know what to do with yourself.
And sometimes you don't know what to do with yourself anyway.
Well,
And sometimes you get caught in love by doing something with yourself, so you never
that's
know.
not love, my friend. That's something else.
That's self-love, baby.
That's self-love.
Self-love. What were you going to say, Jordan?
Let's talk about some self-love tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, how about we talk about self-love or just love in general?
Authentic self-love?
Just
or-
start talking, man. We'll roll with
We'll
it.
roll with it. I love myself. How about you guys?
You're a liar!
Next
No,
question.
no.
Maybe not.
So, have you ever heard of unconditional love? Like the love you have for a child?
Yes.
Okay. What about unconditional self-love? Chew on that for a concept.
I've been chewing on it for the last 49 years, and I still haven't quite
still
been
a
able
little
to.
sour.
It keeps regurgitating in my stomach every day.
It leaves a bitter aftertaste.
Do you think that
does.
that is something that you kind of have as a child and then possibly lose and then have to regain it? Or
I think you can learn the concept of love and how it relates to relationships from your parents and from intimate relationships you have with family members as a child. You could see how it works in a family dynamic, and then you can relate that in your later life to your experiences with others. And as far as it relates to yourself, I mean, receiving adoration and praise as a child is a way to gain confidence, and the more confident you are, the more you might love yourself or admire yourself. You can step back and look at who you are and be like, "Wow, I'm proud of that." But self-love, I think, is something that everyone has. Obviously, we feed ourselves and put ourselves to sleep every night, so we take care of ourselves on the essential level. And isn't that love in itself, or is that just survival?
Oh, I think, well,
I would say
there's
it's
a lot to
little
chew
love,
on
for
that
sure.
There's love there because you feed your children, you put them to sleep at night because you would wish the very best for them.
As you would a pet, you know.
Or a pet, or, anyone. You can just choose, fill in the blanks. But unconditional self-love, I believe, is the concept that I've been running through my head. Like, why is it that some people, not all, have a harder time loving themselves than others. And shouldn't your love for yourself be unconditional as well?
Well,
Yes and yes.
There you go. We're done here.
yeah, now I'm still chewing on all this, man. There's more.
It's heavy.
There's more on this plate than on a friggin' Thanksgiving dinner. So to just be like, yes and yes, no.
No, it's not that
No,
easy.
it's not
I
that
know
easy.
it's not that easy, man.
It's not
we don't
that
have to get
easy.
all philosophical here,
It's
but
not that easy. I'm going to take one part of it. I think if we're talking about self-love, I don't think we can talk about the family dynamic of loving your children. Because, I think everything is affected by your lack or your need for self-love. So I don't necessarily... I can't equate unconditional love with making sure that you have, their food on the table or like just taking care of needs. Because as parents, we'd want to take care of the basic needs. But I think parenting brings out all of the things that we need to work on ourselves for. And I don't think that it's anything other than your greatest teacher if you have the ability to take a second out of yourself to look at it as a whole and say, okay, because me as a parent, I know I've infected my kid with some of my own viruses, like the virus of anxiety. And I'll say viruses because viruses we have antibiotics for. Viruses we can fight. Our immune system gets better with viruses if susceptible to them. And I think that what we mirror to our kids is what they're going to learn because they don't listen to what we say. They actually pay attention to what we do.
Right.
And
They imitate your
they
your
imitate it,
qualities.
right? But I don't necessarily think that by feeding them every day or whatever it is that is actually. I don't necessarily know if that's teaching them something outside of just that you have to eat every day. Maybe it is. It's been a long time since I've been a 10-year-old.
yeah, I think you might be looking at it in a different way, though. I don't think he was saying like,
Well, we're talking about self-love.
Right.
So the thing is that if we take it from the standpoint of looking at our children, because that's how we started this. Like, I can tell you this, becoming a parent made me question everything I've ever known, ever learned, and everything. And it made me start trying to figure out if I needed to think of things differently. Because it wasn't, in all honesty, my kid was nearly 2 years old, and here I was thinking I wanted to die.
Right.
So, again, I think, Jordan actually had posed this before our conversation. Actually, we kind of got into this topic from, all these vantage points of love. Because love is a pretty big ball of snow globe. You know what I mean? There's a lot of snowflakes in there that you can watch fall in different spots.
It's like a multifaceted diamond.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And love of self is super important, and we spend a lot of time talking about it. I don't necessarily... I don't know. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this, because...
which part?
Just any of it. Jump in anytime. The water's warm. And we're only in the 2-foot side because I can't
curious.
reach the bottom.
I'm more,
Get your water wings on, boys. Come on.
I'm more curious to not necessarily come to a conclusion or get an answer of, but the whole why, because I don't think I'm alone in this, but why do we seem to show others more compassion or love than we show ourselves?
We seem to show others more compassion than we show ourselves. But the simple fact that you care for your appearance and you buy yourself seemingly nice things and you have a comfortable home and you groom yourself, is that not sufficient self-love? And why are we confused that there may be a lack thereof?
Well, those are pieces of self-love for sure. But I'm saying that's why I said seem, because I think there's more to, like, some people confuse, like when we're talking mental health, they confuse like self-care with, just being an asshole. Like, well, I'm just going to shut everybody out, and I'm doing self-care. Like, not really.
Okay, so let's say you have a relationship with someone, Mr. X, and he has this personality trait where he shuts people out. You happen to love this person because of your connection with him. Do you forgive him for that personality trait?
Well, yeah, I guess it depends on the situation, but I would.
So shouldn't you also forgive yourself for your personality traits, for your regrettable decisions?
But it seems harder.
Well,
to do so.
forgiving yourself is one thing, but dude, you can forgive yourself for anything, okay? But if you keep repeating something or keep doing something or keep saying the same thing and you just keep apologizing for it after it's done, maybe you're an asshole. Like, maybe, I mean, because if you do something that is wrong that people view, and I'm not saying I don't view as wrong necessarily, because I'm not sure, like, but if you have a personality trait that forces you to blurt out, "You're a dick," to whomever, sure, people can forgive that maybe the first couple of times, and then thinking that it's just a tick, but you don't do anything to fix the tick by going to the tick removal class. Like, it's, again, intention is great, and I know that intention holds a lot of things, but if you intend to be an asshole, it still means you're an asshole. And
so what power do we have as individuals to analyze our intentions and look at our behaviors and how they may affect others? And also, every asshole who lashes out and raises their voice in public at their significant other may be having the worst day of their life, or they may have a personality trait they haven't yet confronted in a meaningful way.
Yes, I agree with you, because I can tell you from personal experience, I was that guy.
We've all been
I
there.
was that guy when we were on vacation, like when my daughter was probably 2.5. Like, I was still riding it really hard, and I got really pissed off, and I literally went off the fucking deep end in the middle of fucking Maine. And I forget where we were exactly, but I've been on that street a bunch of different times too. I'm not sure where in Maine we were, but we were there, and I'll never forget it. It was horrible, and I felt like an ass. But again, if I was to do that again, knowing the reasons why I did it then I'm still an asshole. Because again, if I haven't done anything to address that personality trait, or done it, now granted, I mean,
but there's people that may not be able to address it, or I
think you can address everything, regardless of whether you want to address it or there's always the right time to address it. You can always address everything. It's just not comfortable all the time, right?
It isn't comfortable addressing yourself, or
it depends on
looking yourself in the mirror.
If you're talking severe mental illness, then I don't know if you can necessarily. Some people might not be able to address it. They might not be able to see it or know what's going on.
That's up for consideration as well.
Well, it actually kind of piggybacks off what we started to say earlier, what you had asked, because Jordan had posed all these questions, all these different questions when it came to love, about loving somebody with a mental illness versus somebody loving you that has a mental illness, we kind of were at the point of saying, wow, that's a lot of stuff to chew on. So to cover it all in one episode would be hard, because I think it's difficult to love somebody with a mental illness. I think it's difficult to love yourself with a mental illness. And I definitely think it's very difficult to love yourself and someone else when you both have a mental illness. I don't think that because I think that creates this whole other ripple of things that the average normal person will say doesn't have to deal with. Even though, as we know, most people need to be in recovery from something, regardless of whether it's acknowledged or not. So I think that a lot of people, I would say the majority of us now, are probably anxiety ridden about lots of different things.
How can you not be in modern times when we have 1,000 things to think about a second, and life is no longer as simple as it was even 20 years ago?
Right. And I agree. I totally agree with you on that. And
You
that's
can lessen that, though. You don't need to, just because there's 1,000 things, you don't need to pay attention to 1,000 things.
I agree. It's harder for some people to unplug themselves
Right.
from the matrix, quote unquote, and to live a simple life. I find myself craving it, let's say monthly. I don't necessarily unplug myself, but I return myself to nature, and I have literally no agenda for like 24 hours.
Sweet.
And that puts me in a place of like, okay, now I'm longing for, like, I'm craving this busy, like, gotta go, let's get stuff done. I'm craving it. And then I just kind of sit with it like I'm an addict trying to, like, come down from my drugs. And if I just sit with that discomfort, I find, like, after a while, I'm like, all right.
Well, I think
I'm cool just
routines
sitting
are
here
safe
now.
for us. You know, we feel more comfortable. As growing up as children, they need like a routine.
Right.
You know, they learn better, they grow better. That's just it's like a safety thing.
A routine is one thing, but flagrant self-abuse is another.
For sure.
You're running yourself into the ground intentionally
Right.
when you see all the warning signs, and that could be associated with a lack of self-love. You know,
Absolutely.
right? If you
Absolutely.
don't love yourself, you're like, I can work this 16-hour day, and when I get home, I'm going to eat processed foods, and I'm going to stay up till 3 a.m. looking at political stuff on the internet. And you know how that story ends.
I personally think most people don't really have a clue what true love is. I think most people base it on who they think they are or who they want their partner to be, like an image of how, you know, things should be or could be.
Some people are idealists.
Yeah. So do they really love a person, or do they love an idea, or they love an image? You know.
I suppose that's up for that person to decide, though. I don't think that. I don't. You know. Again, we can't really. I don't know if you can necessarily, like, boil love down to that. I mean, sure, you could, I suppose. But I definitely think that in order to really experience love, there's got to be some concrete, like, examples
Sure.
of love. And I don't think that you know what, man, I honestly don't know if those exist, because
Sure,
again,
they do.
Dude,
But
I
you
don't
have
know,
to
because I don't necessarily know.
But
if-
you have to know. Well, like, someone can't say, like, this is love. You have to go, you know what?
well, you have to define
I
love.
enjoy drinking root beer in the chill zone. Like, that would be some people's idea of love. And
That's
who am I
not
to-
love, though.
Well, if they
That's
love
contentment.
it, who?
So what's your example of love? Did you grow up watching romantic movies and, like, Leonardo DiCaprio and what's her face in the Titanic, and their love and compassion for one another? Was that your example of love growing up, or was it watching your mentally healthy parents fulfill their duties in a functioning household? Was that your idea of love? Some people's idea of love can be skewed by their influences in childhood and adulthood, and also their past relationships. If you had mentally unfit parents, then your idea of love can be distorted and unhealthy. However, you may have watched Family Matters growing up, and you see that seemingly healthy
So let's
family.
say that's the case. Go back to the unfit, or, well, I don't know how you worded it, the mentally unfit situation.
Mm-hmm.
How does a child come out of that and learn self-love?
by finding other examples that they wish to adapt themselves to.
So
But-
it's
Yeah, but
something
children,
that they have
children
to know
don't
and-
have.
and-
But children, again, though, man, like, we're talking about children. Children,
Well,
like, before the age of 5, don't ingest anything but what is already handed to them. So, and then you get between the ages of 5 and say, I'll say 11 for the argument's sake, because I'm trying to be very hopeful about puberty. That, before 11 or 12, okay, It's you've learned the first 5 years before you say go to grade school and you start getting overtaken by your peers. Now, if you have not had a healthy, like again, healthy is all relative, because people could say that if you were
let's say in general, I don't want to just, you know what I mean? I don't want to dig too deep. That's all. I'm just kind of...
Healthy is on a spectrum, but let's say it's on the negative end of the spectrum. The situation, the example that we're discussing here.
I think that kids can learn to love themselves if they have enough positive reinforcement of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that there is enough positive reinforcement to offset all the negative shit that kids get in a dysfunctional home. Because, again, you can't get it from your peer system because your peer system is you. And at that age, everybody's still learning. So
Okay, so let's move it up a notch and say, what about when you're in your 20s?
in your 20s for what? Learning how?
Yeah, where do you go? How do you...
No, that's a good question, because some people need to relearn that as they become a
That's
young
what I'm
adult.
trying to say. How
and
do
they
you
start forming
relearn that?
relationships with their significant other. They might find a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or okay, let's just focus on a simple, understandable concept. Young man meets a woman. He has a bad example of love in his childhood, and he wants to treat this woman with the utmost respect. However, he hasn't learned the healthy way to love another until he decided that he wanted to, and he's 21. How does one go about that?
Well, I think the idea of him wanting to is a huge first step.
100%. That's the most important part.
That's the most important part, because most 21-year-olds aren't thinking about love.
But that's intention.
Yes.
Well, that's
Yes.
that's intention, but that doesn't mean that it gets attention. Dude, intention is great.
Well,
but
you just said it was great. You said intention isn't that big a deal. But
I
then you
didn't
just
say
said
it's
now.
not. I didn't say it's not a big deal.
Okay.
But intention only goes so far if you don't put any.
Right, but
if
you
there's
just-
no practice behind
intention without a plan is just a dream or a wish.
It's just
it. Well,
intention.
it's pissing in the wind. That's all it is.
You need action with intention. I'm not
Yes.
saying intention's everything, but you just said it yourself. Like if
Intention
that's the
starts.
first step, that's a big first step. And
intention
that first
starts the
step is
ball
intention.
rolling, and attention brings it back.
So all of us here, we're sitting here in our 30s and 40s, right? How do we tell that 21-year-old man what do we say to him to begin him on his journey of loving others and loving himself in a healthy way?
If I'll tell you the truth, if I could go back to my 21-year-old
Look
self
yourself
right
in the
now
eye,
and look at
yeah.
myself in the eye and say, Billy, you know what? You don't love yourself. And until you truly learn what that is, you're not going to be able to have a healthy relationship. And it's then I would also hand a couple of books and say, these are books that were written long before, and this is the start. But I couldn't pull myself away from any relationship in my teens, because I was so afraid that nobody was going to love me at all, that at 21, dude, I had no right being in a relationship with anybody. I should have just stayed with being in a band, because it would have been easier, because then I would have been able to say to myself, then I got to look at myself. But if me, myself, could come back to my younger self, and I would be like, the thing that you have to understand is there is no love for you at all until you learn to love yourself from where you're at right now. You have to accept everything and be responsible for everything that's come in, everything that goes out.
So you would demand a bit more emotional education as well as critical self-assessment.
Yeah, we don't have there is no such thing as emotional education.
Well, that's a journey that you take on your own.
But-
there isn't a class for that in high school or college.
But you can see it in everybody you walk past on the street. You can see it in our interactions everywhere.
Yeah, 'cause
we
don't focus on. We focus more on test scores and
it's not,
and
dude.
brain IQ.
It's not even just. It's
emotional
not even
IQ.
just. It's not even just education, though. It's like when we get out of school, we think we've already learned. It comes back to mindset, and like me too, man. First day, like. If I don't know how to do something, it still throws a trigger in me that gets all upset, because it's easier for me to be pissed off that I don't know something and waste more time than it is for me to actually sit down and say, okay, maybe I can learn this.
Well, now we're talking about the opposite of love.
Right. We're
Fear-
talking
fear
about
and hate.
fear, which is the only real which is really there's only two choices, love or fear.
The
And
contrast.
everything is fear.
Yeah.
Everything is
would you-
fear based, regardless of whether it's not loving yourself or fear of the other or fear of the unknown or fear of your process being blown to smithereens.
Sure.
I guess. At least that's what I'm coming to learn anyway.
I feel like there's something in the middle, though.
Between love and fear,
Yeah, there's not just love and fear.
indifference.
But indifference is a fear. Indifference. If you're indifferent, then you're making the
But if-
choice to be indifferent. So you're actually acting out of fear. You're not acting out
sometimes,
of love.
Sometimes you have to admit you don't know how to feel, so you choose not to feel. You can disassociate and be like, hey, "This situation is too heavy."
All right, so what if I know without a doubt that you're a toxic person and I don't want to be around you?
You could.
Is that fear?
There is a fear of yes. So it is fear, but it also may, as a consequence, be a sign of love for yourself.
Okay.
If you choose not to drink poison, it's because you want to live. If you choose not to associate with toxic personalities, then that's because you don't want to adapt that
So
toxic
that would be more
personality.
in the love category.
That would be a love for oneself and a boundary to separate yourself from others.
Right,
I wouldn't say it would necessarily be hate because I don't think
Well, I know. That's why I was just thinking I feel like there's something in between that. That's all.
it would be love on one end, hate on the other, and indifference somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
I still think, in my own personal opinion, I still think that indifference is
More on the hate side of things.
is more on the fear side of things.
Fear.
I don't like to use the word hate because I've used it very, 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 very much in my life, and I'm like, where I hate peas or I hate this or I hate this person.
You don't want to give the word any more power.
No, I don't want to give any of those words any more power than they need
So do
because
you
they have a
fear
lot of
peas?
power. No, I don't fear them at all. But what I do know is that I love myself now more than I ever have, and holding on to useless shit
Right.
is not serving me.
Right.
It's just not serving me.
So
But I held on to shit out of fear that I wouldn't be the same person if I didn't have this hate or if I didn't have this indifference. Or if I did, because what's the worst thing that's going to happen if I say to myself, I forgive this idea, or I forgive this incident, or I forgive this person, because you know what? In truth, we all have a part to play in all of it. And at the end of it, like the only way an idea continues is if there's enough people to continue that idea. So why continue an idea of hate and fear when you can, when you get more with sugar than you do spice, man? You know what I mean?
Well, that's something you learned with your life experience.
It is, and it's hard. And it's hard.
21-year-old Billy didn't know that.
No, 21-year-old Billy was angry and mad at the world, and
Yeah.
and felt entitled, quite honestly. And I think that's part of our big problem too, is that we feel entitled. We feel entitled to be happy. We feel entitled to, to have what we want when we want it. And then even like we're full of entitlement.
Well,
And
entitlement is a side effect of youth.
I don't necessarily think it's a side effect of youth, because I see an awful lot of entitled grown-ups or supposed grown-ups that
culture.
that's
Yeah,
still
it's
that
a culture.
It's an identity. It's like it's a cultural
I think
identity of
people
this.
throw the word around far too much.
Entitlement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, we throw the word entitlement when we talk about government programs that help the poor. We throw entitlement around when we talk about teenagers. And again, we're shortchanging teenagers by saying that they're entitled, because we're not really looking at it from their eyes. Because I wish an adult had said to me when I was 18 or 19 that, wow, when I was 18 or 19, it was like this, but I can understand why you're mad because of this. Because that's another thing too, is that like I hate hearing grown-ups say, and this is what's one thing I do hate. I hate hearing grown-ups say, oh, what do you know? You haven't had any experience in the world. Because the truth is that there's a lot of kids out there who have to be the grown-up in the house. There's a lot of kids out there who have to grow up.
That's situational, though. There's some.
It's
kids,
not situational. It's still,
Absolutely
it still
is.
comes.
You're
but
telling me you're going to take advice from a 14-year-old kid.
Dude, I'm going to tell you one thing.
That's cool.
If
Hey,
14-year-olds,
that's fine.
some 14-year-olds have a better head on their shoulders than half of the people that I sit within rooms half the time.
I get that, but that's why it's situational. You can't use it.
You should be prepared to accept anyone's perspective.
You're
but
generalizing
also,
like a group of people that say that. I think there's certain cases where yes, absolutely. If you take a kid that stems from a decent, intact household that has pretty much entitled written all over it, and then you put this person and they're yapping about the world and how the world works, and you're young and you haven't really experienced it, I would absolutely 100% stand by that.
They know how their world works, or at least they think
Well, they
do.
know how that, right.
Right, but that's not how the world works. That's how your world works. That's your reality. It's not reality.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean as a grown-up you know any better.
That's
because it's still your reality, and it's still only your world that works that way.
But you deal with your perceptions that come from experiences.
Only when you're full of yourself enough to be like, well, I know better because I've lived this. Though.
Well,
Let's admit, no teenager knows better. They just know what they know, and
they have ideas that should be heard.
Absolutely,
but at the same time, to say, if you've been woodworking for 10, 15 years, and you have a kid that read an article on the internet,
right,
and he's now the spokesperson of woodworking,
right,
there might be something a little fun.
So time invested into any area of expertise is worth acknowledging. So if there's a young man or a woman who's spent 16 years learning how to play guitar and they're a virtuoso, I would listen to them when it comes to how to play guitar.
But hold on. But being an expert, again though, there's no person on this planet that we know that is an expert at anything. They may know a lot about a certain thing, okay? But not everybody knows everything about everything. You may know how to do something
like expert at that specific.
But again though, if you look at language, expert means that you've learned everything there is to learn and there's nothing else to learn in that specific thing. There's always something else to learn. There's always another tool to add to the tool belt. There's always another fucking spike for the shoe that
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I agree, Will. I think that you know what you know, and I know what I know, and Tim knows what he knows.
Right, and together we actually might know a lot of stuff, and
we might know more.
Be actually able to do something that's pretty cool.
And that's the beautiful thing about inviting ideas into your life from people you might not necessarily consider to have the right information you're looking for. To talk, have dialogue with people who are younger than you, older than you, less knowledgeable, all over the spectrum. You can talk to anyone, and if you're willing to accept what they have to say as their level of expertise, then you might actually learn something. Or you might actually learn something about yourself, or you might learn nothing
I think that's
all.
the big. No, I think you always stand to learn about yourself.
Right.
I don't to learn out. To say I've learned nothing at all.
Sure.
I've learned nothing at all about everything that I've ever been in would be false, because I think you have to be open to the learning. You have to have that mindset of growth and not
right.
this fixed mindset that everything is this way.
So what would you? If you could look at your 21-year-old self.
Oh, well, I would encourage kindness and patience with yourself and with others. And I would say to myself, my younger self, I would need to slow down and take your time, and that rushing in to the wrong things can set you back further than you'll ever know. And as far as love is concerned, love is a healthy thing. If love is a healthy thing, and it doesn't have to be a hurtful thing. Love, as it turns out, can actually hurt. The wrong kind of love. I had this discussion with someone recently that it is possible to be loved too much. It's possible to have an overbearing parent who shelters you and protects you and puts you in a shell and cocoons you from being exposed to life and being exposed to adversity.
So would that be love, though, or would that be more the fear?
I think when I think about my past, I think I was sheltered in an abundance of love and therefore denied my life's experience in some ways.
I see what you're saying.
My life experience was limited up to a point until I broke out of that so-called cocoon of love with a big question mark. Was it love or was it possession? Was it protection? Was it suffocation? I think it's possible that love can be a very powerful and almost hurtful, toxic trait in some people.
Yeah, I'm sure it's also possible that some people in that situation may not realize, may not realize the power of it, and may not realize they're, using it to install fear.
I definitely think that a lot of people act out of love, but it's one of those. It's almost one of those codependent sort of things where they feel that they're loving you by protecting you, but yet they're instilling you with fear and they're instilling you with these doubts. And again, unfortunately, and I think this is why that saying about not taking anything personally and understanding that, everybody does the best they can with what they've learned up to that point. And again, which is why it really calls into question that the only way that you can actually love anybody, including yourself, is to know yourself and to be able to stand up and take that dive, man, to jump off that cliff to say, okay, why do I really feel this way? And what am I saying to myself that I need to say to myself? What am I saying to myself that I don't need to say to myself? And I think that it's really important to take a step back and be like, I don't know most anything outside of me except for my own experience. And I think that you have to start looking at your own experience and start using it as your own university. The university.
Right.
Are you going to hang out for another episode?
I would be willing to consider that.
All right. Awesome. Dude, we've had a great time this week with Jordan. We're probably going to have him on for next week's episode too, or in a couple weeks when this next episode comes out. So don't forget, smash the like button, all the notifications on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Go to Close Knit and pick up yourself a t-shirt or hoodie, man. And PayPal. That's how you can contribute to the show. And until next week, be well.
Be safe.
Be
Above.